as we went to break, and I wanted to be able to finish it. But I also want to talk about the fact that I'm sure he's seen this in the news. John P. Holdren has admitted they've got weather modification tests that have been going on, barium salts, aluminum dioxide, sulfur particles, that now they want to start spraying into the atmosphere to save the Earth. Is this just an exercise now where they're going to say, look, we didn't have global warming because we saved you? I mean, it's this, they are basically casting themselves like a Hollywood movie as our saviors. Is there any way to get these control freaks, Lord Monckton, out of our lives?
Oh, yes, there is. In those countries like America, but unlike Britain, where your government is still elected by you. We have elections, but we elect merely a Duma, which has no power. The European dictatorship now crushes us under the heel of endless pettifogging bureaucracy. But you still have, in the United States, in Canada, in Australia, in many parts of the English-speaking world, the right to make and unmake your governments. And it's only your governments that can make and unmake your laws. So you wear the trousers, and you can vote them out.
But then Al Gore can't save me.
Hang on a moment. Holdren can't save you. He's a nincompoop. Everybody knows even he knows he's a nincompoop. But the point is that Obama and all his weird administration of kooks and crazies like Stephen Chu, who said the solution was to paint the world white, these people, you know, I don't know what they're on, but I wish I had some. It really is. It's just crazy now. What is happening here, and I've seen this before in government, is they've suddenly said to themselves, oh my gosh, we've got it wrong. They know this now. And the thing that is frightening them more than anything else, which is why they're not even mentioning it yet, is that a very good professor down in Sydney called Murray Salby has been quietly doing some research. It's taken him 2 years, shut away in his ivory tower with the ivy growing in through the window. He's been there quietly working away at some rather startling, very new satellite evidence. I've seen it. The rest of the world hasn't yet, but I can tell you a little bit about it without breaching any confidence. What it shows is there is absolutely no connection between the vast centres of population where the CO2 is being emitted by us and the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere. The concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere is not uniform, as the IPCC has been trying to tell us. It varies all over the world. But the variations, over land at any rate, have absolutely nothing to do with where we are or the emissions we're putting out. I'll tell you what causes those variations. It is the temperature of the air around them. Do you know the place on the Earth which has the highest CO2 concentration as seen by these satellites and measured from space?
No.
It's Taklamakan Desert in western China, north of Tibet. It's just a desert. There's nothing there. But that's where the highest concentration of CO2 is. Why? Because it's one of the hottest places on Earth, and it's surrounded almost entirely by mountains, unlike the Sahara, which of course is vastly more open. And so there you find this high, I say it's only 5% above the world average, but nevertheless, that is significant because what it tells us is the reason why there is more CO2 in the atmosphere is that it has got warmer for other reasons and not the other way around. So this means that whatever the climate sensitivity is, however much warming a given amount of CO2 might cause, the CO2 that we are putting in the atmosphere has practically nothing to do with it. And this, frankly, is the end of the scare. He's coming out with a book on it in a couple of weeks' time. And you heard it here first because it's not been publicised. You can imagine how little the left-wing news media like this story. And there will be a peer-reviewed paper following sometime early next year.
Lord Monckton, do 5 more minutes with us, then I'm going to do calls. We got Luke Radowski coming. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are back live. Lord Christopher Monckton is our guest. Again, they have had to admit that they put out fake maps, Atlas of the World showing Greenland melting when it actually was expanding. They've had to basically apologize and say it was a mistake now. But Lord Monckton, you were getting to CO2 levels rising after heat goes up. And, of course, we've known that for a while, that Al Gore flips the graphs. But this new information is bombshell, and you're breaking it here with this peer-reviewed journal coming out in the next 2 weeks. Please tell us more.
Right, it's a book that's coming out in the next couple of weeks, peer-reviewed article next year. Strange way round, but that's the way he's doing it, and he's been working on this for 2 years. I got to hear about it 6 months ago, wasn't allowed to see any of the details. Eventually, I got hold of him and said, look, come on, I need to know a little bit about this, it's very exciting. And he said, okay, I'll give you an outline. I still haven't seen the graphs, but I've seen this map of CO2 concentrations, and it is quite fascinating, because it's very, very clear that there's something going on that none of the models had suspected, none of the learned journals and scientists had suspected. This is real world, new data, analysed by somebody who previously, like me, many years ago, he thought maybe we had a problem with CO2. Now, he says, as a result of this research, he doesn't think we've got a problem anymore. If we have, it's not a problem that's anything to do with us. We are simply not influential in changing the climate at all. Now, of course, let's be careful about this. I always am. I don't want to over-egg this pudding, but it hasn't yet been examined by anybody else. I've only heard one side of the story. What I have heard impresses me. I know he's been speaking to other scientists whom I respect, and they impress me, and they have in turn been impressed by him. So it is beginning to look as though there is something in this. And that's not all. Not so long ago, Roy Spencer, who runs the satellites that catch all this data about temperature and CO2 and other things in the atmosphere, he published a paper not so long ago confirming a result he came out with the previous year, which was attacked by the usual suspects. The ClimateGate emailers piled in and said, no, he was wrong. And what he was saying is that clouds actually cause more of a cooling effect on Earth than a warming effect. Fairly obvious if you think about it, but the models were trying to tell us it was the other way around, because that was the only way they could make out we had a problem with CO2. Now, a paper by a guy whom I debated against a couple of years ago, who has now changed sides, he's a scientist at Reading University, Richard Allen, he has found that, in fact, the clouds do indeed have a cooling effect and not a warming effect. This changes all the numbers in the models. So the science is coming in from all directions now and showing what nonsense all this is. And if I can add also to this the economic point, because I'm going to be in Santa Fe in a month's time at the 3rd Santa Fe Climate Conference, which is one of the very few conferences around the world where scientists on both sides of the debate are allowed to take part in debates with one another. And I'm going to be there to give, this time, an economic rather than a scientific message, because I've developed a way of allowing policymakers worldwide, even if they know nothing much about either economics or climate science, to work out just how cost-effective or cost-ineffective in making global warming go away any individual policy that you might implement actually is. And I've been running this metric now, using it with various governments around the world, showing them how cost ineffective this is. When the Chinese saw it, they said, well, this changes everything. So they said that there's just no real basis for our wasting any more time on this. I said, no, of course, from the propaganda point of view, you maybe want to be seen to be going green in the way that is fashionable at the moment, but for heaven's sake, don't spend too much of your people's money on it.
All right, well, Lord Monckton, we're out of time. Scienceofpublicpolicy.org. Thank you so much for being with us. We're going to come back with Luke Radowski and your phone calls and more news. Stay with us.